Madhuri Leela, you're muted.
Hare Krishna, Manchakalpatarvischa, Kripasindhu Bhaevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. I'm Madhuri Leela Devi Dasi, and I'm going to be your host this evening. Welcome to our presentation on forgiveness, brought to you courtesy of the End of Life Care Alachua. Our guest speaker this evening is Ghanashyam Das. He is an active member of the New Roman Reiki community, along with his good wife, Bhaktilata Devi. He joined community. He joined at the Bhakti Center in New York City, where he continues to play an active role. Ghanashyam Prabhu is a certified professional chaplain and works in that capacity at one of the local hospices in Gainesville. Back when he lived in New York City, he also served as a university chaplain at both Columbia University and NYU. He's also a member of the End of Life Care here in Alachua. So, dear audience, we'll be taking questions at certain points during the presentation and also at the end. So please type in your questions in the comments, or you can ask them personally on Zoom. And also keep yourself muted unless you are asking questions. So welcome back, Ghanashyam Prabhu. Nice to have you this evening. You're going to be talking about forgiveness this evening. It's a topic that surfaces in most people's lives and has been written about over the ages. Even so, it's very difficult to put into practice. So please enlighten us on how we can genuinely practice forgiveness and how that can impact our love for Krishna.
Thank you so much, Madhuri Leela Devi. Grateful to be here with all of you in this discussion on forgiveness. We entitled this presentation, Experiencing Krishna Through Forgiveness. Because to truly experience Krishna, something in us has to be compatible with Krishna's nature. If you ever noticed, if you're in a state of deep humility, you can have some experience of Krishna because that state is compatible with Krishna. Or if you're in a service attitude, if you really connect to genuine service attitude, again, that state is compatible with Krishna himself. And so contact is made. Just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktosi me sakha cheti. He tells Arjuna, because you're my devotee and you're my friend, therefore you can understand this mystery of my nature. You can enter into that. Because again, those are qualities to be a friend of Krishna's. Krishna's the friend of all. So if we're also friendly towards him, then those two natures can meet, that connection can take place. You're my friend, he says. You're my devotee, to have a devotional attitude again. So for us to connect, to experience God, something in us has to be compatible with the nature of God. If I'm in a state of pride, full of myself, then it's like a wall blocking me from the experience of God. If I'm in illusion, if I'm hostile, all of these things block us from the experience of God. So forgiveness, in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna says, he's speaking to Uddhava, he says, Titikshasmi. that I am forgiveness. So Krishna identifies, Krishna's very nature is forgiveness. And so it follows that when I can achieve a state of forgiveness, then I can also experience Krishna and Krishna's grace. So Krishna says that in Gita. He identifies, I am forgiveness, Titikshasmi. And Krishna's grace is actually omnipresent, which means it is everywhere at all times. And Prabhupada gives the example of the sun, like the sun, the energy of the sun, the light of the sun is pervading everything. But I can choose to keep myself in a cave away from the sun. So in regards to this topic of forgiveness, what is that cave? What keeps us away from the experience of Krishna, a deeper experience of Krishna? This one word, which is the opposite of forgiving, is resentment. An unforgiving heart or a resentful heart is not compatible with the nature of Krishna. So it's kind of, if we again go to the analogy of the cave, it's what, what's that cave built of? What's it made of? This wall, this resentment and unforgiving heart does not allow the experience of Krishna. We have to be, in one sense, there's an old verse from I believe it's the Vishnu Purana, but it says only the divine can worship the divine. Only when we actually achieve our higher nature can we relate with the higher nature of God. So the same idea of God is forgiveness. He is forgiveness. Forgiveness is divine, true forgiveness. And resentment is what blocks that. Holding resentment doesn't allow for this experience of forgiveness and doesn't allow for a deeper experience of Krishna. So then the question is, right, we're all wondering, how do I do this? Resentment is there, maybe there. What do I do? What do I do? And we often jump to what do we do? But the real starting place is that we first have to understand certain things. To truly understand anything properly, if you really want to understand what real love is, what the solution to various problems, what are those solutions? If you really want to understand anything properly, we have to first step back and see the whole picture of reality. Modern education doesn't show us the whole picture of things. We just deal with little problems that are right in front of us and we try to find solutions to them without understanding the full picture. Why are we here? Who are we? What am I? Those questions, therefore, we never come to solutions because we never come to the root of things. We can never find the real solution to things like addiction and the various habits that we have that are harmful, resentful heart, all of these things. As soon as you ask, like, what do I do to overcome this? Then one needs to see everything. One needs to see the full picture. This is called Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means this full picture of reality. Metaphysics. There has to be an understanding of metaphysics. Sanatana Goswami is said to be the Acharya of Sambandha Gyan. So by we can pray to him for a vision of what is truth. In his conversation with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asked these simple questions. Who am I? Why do I suffer? You see, he starts with his very fundamental, basic things. And Lord Chaitanya, what does he describe to him? How does he start his answer? He again steps back and shows the whole picture from the very beginning of things. Purusho prakriti stohi, that the spirit soul falls into the material energy. And the spirit, when we come into the material energy, the spirit itself, it kind of like shuts down, or you can say falls asleep. And then another self emerges. See, because now we're in the material energy, so we need material vehicles. So the material body, the material senses, the material mind, that wakes up, that starts to live, and the soul goes to sleep. It's always there. It's the active force within us, but it's as if it's sleeping right now. And this other material self comes into being. So, and what's going on in that material mind? Well, you'll see how this is all related to forgiveness. This is why we start from here, so we can really see what is the cause of resentment, how to actually forgive. So we have this material mind now. The soul has kind of shut down. The material mind is very active. And what is the material mind doing? It's absorbed in dvandva mohenam. It's absorbed in the dualities of material life. Absorption in those dualities is actually what keeps the material mind alive and well. Not really well, but in terms of it keeps it sustained, it keeps it going, the material consciousness. So we become lost in illusory dualities. You know, we think this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, but they're all good and bad in quotation marks. It's like, that's why it's called dvandva mohena, illusory dualities. So, you know, not everyone can maybe see me right now, but there's good in quotation marks and there's bad. There's happiness in quotation marks and there's distress in quotation marks. And here's another one I'll throw in there to bring it to the topic. There's forgiveness in quotation marks and there's resentment in quotation marks. What do you think I mean by starting there, mentioning that? What do I mean to say when I'm pointing out that there's forgiveness so long we're absorbed in material consciousness? There's another duality, is forgiving somebody or resenting somebody. Those are your two choices. So what do I mean by saying forgiveness in quotation marks? Anyone? Just wanted to make sure that following this so far, why would I mention that as one of the dualities? Why is that important for our discussion? Anyone have some thought on that?
So these qualities, forgiveness and what was the other, resentment, it's also relative to like person circumstances and what people understand under resentment and forgiveness.
Yes, exactly. It's also relative, which means so long I'm in material consciousness, I can't truly forgive, truly let go of resentment. Isn't this an important place to start this conversation? Otherwise, if I just, you know, everyone's telling us we should forgive. Every religion says that. Go out and do it. But if you notice, you know, are we really removing resentment completely from the heart when we forgive a person? Or are we just trying to make some peace, you know, just kind of get through it or get along in life? So in material consciousness, there's always two alternatives, right? We can either decide, you know, say somebody harms you, somebody harms me. And then I have two alternatives. I can refuse to forgive them, or maybe I can harm them back. It's like a big no, right? Another reaction is a yes, that, okay, you know, let me forgive this person. Let me keep the peace. I'll feel a little better myself if I do so. You see, you have to look at the motive, the actual motive in doing it. Or maybe I just want to get on with things. Maybe I just should do it, so I'm going to go and do it. I'm supposed to do it. My parents tell me that. My friends tell me that. My religion tells me that I should do it. So I'm just going to go and do it. But if we look closely and honestly, even when we do it, when we try to forgive, we have to look and see closely, is the resentment actually gone? Or when I see that person, there's still some sting? Is there still some experience? So there are problems in this world, and then we have solutions. And Prahlad Maharaj explains that when you come to a solution on the material platform, that actually creates another problem. And so problems and solutions, another manifestation of the duality of this material world. And the solutions are never really solutions unless, again, we see the full picture and understand what really has to be done. You know, it's like a cushion. You ever, if you have a cushion that's filled with air, and if you press down one part of that cushion, you don't actually get rid of the air. The air, it puffs up at another spot. Maybe you don't see it, but there's a compensation. When you push down on an air cushion, the air is still the same amount of air is there, and it comes up at another area in another spot. And we may not see that, but there's always this compensation. You know, I stopped smoking cigarettes, but now because of that, I drink alcohol. Or, you know, well, I stopped drinking alcohol, but now as a reaction to that, I find myself more irritated with people. So a solution on a material platform never quite overcomes the problem. So this realization has to come there into our hearts. We really have to be convinced of this, that my fighting and searching for solutions is all taking place on the wrong platform of existence. This is a powerful realization, because sometimes we think, well, this is not working out. I'm going to try to forgive this person. That didn't really work out. I'm going to try harder. You know, so just imagine you're still in the same state of consciousness, trying a little harder. I'm going to do more. I'm going to try harder. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen. And this is why illusory, because karta ham iti manyate. We cannot actually do anything. We feel like we're doing and we're controlling, and I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to forgive this person. We actually have to connect to the power of forgiveness, which is in the Lord. He is forgiveness. Otherwise, we're, again, another nice example Bhagavatam gives. As I mentioned, when the spirit soul falls into matter, the spirit soul is like goes to sleep. And then there's this whole material life, in a sense, is compared to like a dream. So we have problems in a dream. And then you think, I'm going to find a solution to that. But that solution is also in the dream. So when this is realized, the only intelligent thing to do, the only intelligent desire, when this is actually realized, is that I have to wake up, actually. That's the real thing. First, I have to wake up. Otherwise, in the dream, this is happening and I try to make an adjustment, but you're still sleeping. You're still in this dream. And you can make solutions in the dream and you can get some relief, right? And we have to make attempts and efforts even on that level. But yoga, right? The real yogi is one who starts to see that the goal of life is actually to wake up, to really find my true self, to reconnect to my source. And to realize that all the answers I'm looking for actually exist on another platform of existence. So we have to go back to the scene of the crime, you know, like a detective. He's trying to solve something, try to figure something out. And he goes back to the crime scene, and there he gets some clue or some hint of what happened. So we also have to return to the scene of the crime, which means what for us? Again, the spirit soul comes into the material nature. That's when something happened. That's when something shifted. That's when something changed. What caused that? Why did that happen? And how do I return to my true nature? I've turned away from Krishna. Krishna bahir mukha hoy bhoga vanshakare nikatastamayatari japatiya dare, that the living entity turns away from Krishna and immediately is seized by Maya. And then we become entangled. We get used to that. We feel like this is our real life. We forget. We forget the truth. And actually that turning away from Krishna is a resentment of Krishna. So I'm living in a state of resentment. This is a hard truth, and that's difficult to look at sometimes. But it's good to connect to it and to let it be there and to feel it in our lives. It doesn't have to manifest as a kind of terrible guilt or destroy us in some way, but it's more like a lamentation in the heart, knowing that I've fallen into this nature and I have something in me that's controlling me. It's not the real me. And we long to connect to our real self. And there's a kind of, Christians will call this repentance, a kind of gentle repentance that's there in the heart. So because we're actually in a state of resentment, other people don't create our resentment. Other people don't make us angry. We have resentment, we have anger, and this other person just provokes it. This other person just, does something where it comes out of me, but they're not the cause of it. Right? Usually we don't think that way, right? Somebody does something and we're offended. And we think, well, I'm offended because of so-and-so and this happened. But we don't realize that it's something in us and the person simply provokes it. And then it comes out. And then we can hide it again and cover it. As long as everybody around me is nice and fine, it's also settled within me, kind of hidden. And then as soon as something happens again, here it comes out again, resentment. So this is seeing resentment as a state that we're in. This is why in the Bhagavatam, there's a nice section where Dharma, in the form of a bull, Parikshit, he sees that Dharma, in the form of a bull, is being beaten. And he asks Dharma, he knows who's doing it. And he saw Kali, actually, Kali personified, Kali Yuga personified, the personality of Kali beating the bull. So Parikshit knows who's doing it. But he asks the bull, who has done this to you? And the bull doesn't identify. I'm just pulling up this verse to read it. It's very interesting that the bull does not identify, does not blame the personality of Kali. He doesn't really give an answer, the bull. The bull accuses no one. So then listen to Parikshit's response to that. He glorifies Dharma. He said, yes, of course. Because you are Dharma personified. You know the truth of religion, and you are speaking according to the principle that the destination intended for the perpetrator of irreligious acts is also intended for one who identifies the perpetrator. You are no other than the personality of religion. What is he saying there? Somebody caused some harm to you. And I'm asking you, who was it? Who did it? But because you are Dharma personified, you're not accusing, you're not pointing out who the perpetrator is, because if you point out that it is this person, with resentment in the heart, then you have the same destination as the person who caused you pain. See, if you point with resentment that this person is the cause, we have a very similar nature to that person who did something to us. Maybe we were exploited in some way. But if I resent the person for doing that, because their resentment comes out as exploitation, and then I I also resent. And that way I'm also doing the same thing, but it's coming in a different form. Anger. We feed that anger, we feed that resentment. And the Bhagavatam here says the destination of the person who does the act, but if you're resenting, if you're hating that person for doing so, you have the same destination. And therefore, Dharma knew not to say, oh, this person, kill him, Parikshit, this is the cause. So what is the cause of this resentment, right? That's there in the heart, that's provoked by different people. Nobody's creating it in our hearts. We're living in a certain state where it's there. So there's a verse, Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna also, he wonders about this. What's causing a person to act sinfully, even when he or she doesn't want to? And Krishna says, it is kama only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So there's something inside of me. And the next verse, and then Arjuna, well, maybe he's wondering, where is this thing that's inside of me? And in the next verse, Krishna basically points out that it's everywhere. It's in your body, it's in your senses, it's in your mind, it's in your intelligence. I remember I was reading this book once, and it's written by like a German Christian mystic. And he was saying that, his language was very strong about evil kind of making a home in all of us, how evil has kind of entered in and has made a home and is alive in every human being. And I was just thinking about that, and I just put the book down and I just closed the book, and I thought, is that true? And I was praying to Krishna, Krishna, if that's true, if that's really inside of me, just show it to me, let me see it. And I kind of just closed my eyes and I took my time, nothing was showing up. And then I started to kind of like feel or get a kind of experience of, oh, there's something that's angry. I was starting to get in touch with this, something inside of me that felt some anger. And then I was like, Krishna, show me more. If there's more, show it to me. I want to really see it now. I really want to know the truth of what's happening inside of me. And then all these things started to emerge. I just saw that there was lust there was greed, there was enviousness. And I was like, I started to feel it inside of me. And actually, at some point, I felt sick to my stomach, even just going in this kind of meditation. And just like, almost feeling it as something foreign inside of me that's formed, where there is this anger, there is this jealousy, there is something that wants to pull others down, there is this pride, there's this selfishness. And I realized Krishna showing this to me. This is amazing, because I didn't feel guilt from it. I just felt like, this is unbelievable. I had no idea this is actually what's going on inside of me. And here's the real issue. Here's the real problem. This thing, and if this is in me, this is in everyone. I started really just thinking and acting differently after this experience. I felt like Krishna was giving me a glimpse of what the real problem in life is. You see, we have that inside of us, and then we project the problem outside of us. Oh, it's this person, it's this situation, it's this event that just took place, it's this thing. But to discover that this is really what's driving me, it was shocking. I was actually amazed. And I felt uncomfortable, but I also felt like blessed to see it, to see what's really going on. And the Bhagavad Gita also speaks about this in the sense of And this comes now to how do we forgive? This is the first way of actually starting to understand what it really means to forgive, because it says in Gita, Guna Vartana iti evam. One has to see that everyone's doing so many things. They're hurting each other, they're exploiting, and they're being exploited, and they're harming each other in so many ways, right? But the Gita says a self-realized soul sees that the modes alone are active. The modes of nature are active within people. That's actually what's happening. And in the words of Jesus, right, when he was on the cross and he was being abused and even poked with a spear at that time, how could he say those words? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. How could you say that? Imagine that. Imagine going through something like that and praying for the forgiveness. They know not what they do. That's the Jesus saying the same thing that Krishna is saying in the Gita in terms of understanding that the modes alone are active. People have surrendered to the material energy, and now the material energy is moving them in various ways. And we're harming and we're being harmed. And so he could only utter those words, those magnificent words, because he could actually see that the soul is lost in this person, and what's active is the material mind under illusion doing such harm. They're lost. Forgive them. So just as this thing is inside of me and controlling and driving me, the more I realize that, the more I'll realize that of others as well, the more we start to develop the power, therefore, to forgive them, because we're starting to see with a new lens, with a new understanding. So with this new understanding, with this new realization that it's actually, I'm in this state of resentment because of resentment towards God. So then what needs to be done? I need to surrender to God to overcome this resentment. I have to give myself to God. I have to return from that original place where we turned away. I have to turn back. What does surrender mean? It means to fully turn back to the Lord. When the surrender to the Lord, we hear that word so much, it loses its power in Krishna consciousness, right? We start to hear it. We become, anything you hear over and over and over again, it kind of becomes mechanical inside of you. Oh yes, surrender, of course, surrender to God. We talk about that all the time. We might need to hear it in a new, fresh way, because there's such power in it. If you actually truly surrender to God, then he takes that spirit of wrath, he takes that selfishness out. We can't do it. We can't forgive another person. We still have to make attempts, but now we should attempt with a new understanding. So go to your mother, go to your father, go to your friend who harmed you, and go with this understanding now that just as I harm people and don't really want to, but I do. So this person also harmed me. We're all lost in the material energy. So we go to the person and we can say, and this is an important point, because people often with this topic of forgiveness, we're not forgiving what they did wrong to us. You see, say somebody abuses you. So you're not going to them and saying, oh, no big deal, I forgive you. What we're doing is saying that we could even tell the person, you were wrong for what you did, but I'm wrong for holding resentment towards you. That's where I'm wrong. So I want to let that go now. I want to let that go. And we do that with a prayerful heart, and we do it. And therefore, for what you've done, I can see, just as I can't help myself, you also couldn't help yourself. I can see that now. And I shouldn't be resenting you. So I want to let that go now. With this understanding and with this prayer to Krishna, Krishna, please let this resentment come out of my heart once and for all. Please shine the light of your mercy into the darkness of my heart. Remove this. I'm in a state of resentment. Remove it from me. Once that longing increases, we bring that prayer, into our chanting. Chanting is also a surrender. It's turning the consciousness back to the name, back to Krishna, who's in his name. The mind will want to distract. The mind will want to stay. The material mind wants to live and stay alive. How does it do that? By distraction, by absorption in dualities, by absorption in the mind, thoughts and all that. We get lost in it all. What chanting means, no, just the name. I'll try to stop all that and just give my focus, my attention back, because I know by doing this, that connection to Krishna, once it's firmly established, then just like I was mentioning of that fall into material energy, turning away from Krishna, this is the turning back, the process of surrender. So you can only forgive a person after we surrender to the Lord with our full heart. Resentment is taken out, and you'll see the world in a whole new way. You'll see that people are suffering, whether they're on the top of material life or on the bottom. One sees it all as suffering because all are disconnected from the Supreme Lord, the origin, their source. So it's a different perspective, I think, on forgiveness. And our perspective should be different than everybody else's in Krishna consciousness, because everyone's suggesting we should forgive. Even an atheistic person has no belief in God. He may think, I should forgive and go and forgive somebody, and we think it's done, right? But this is the true situation. The real picture of things is that we've fallen away from the Lord. We're in a state of resentment. We cover it, we hide it. Sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't. But if I'm truly honest with myself, and I truly start to see that this thing is driving me, and I want it gone, but I can't do it. I don't have that power. But if I surrender to the Lord, He will take it away and return to me my true nature. The soul wakes up from that sleep. And the soul has the quality of forgiveness. You don't have to try. It's the nature of the soul to love, to forgive. Just like the Lord himself, he says to Dikshasmi, I am forgiveness. So the part and parcel also has that, that forgiveness that just flows, a state of forgiveness, just like we're in a state of resentment. There's a state of forgiveness. And that it's accomplished by the surrender. So the real solution is not that I'm just giving a few steps of try this, try that. It goes back to Krishna and seeing the power of what surrender to Krishna means. And by accomplishing that, by moving. And so then what do? We go to a person now in our life and we forgive them. Go with this understanding. Go with, also understanding that, well, I can't really do it truly unless Krishna helps me. But I'm going to go and I'm going to see that they've also, just as I've made mistakes, they've made mistakes. Why am I resenting them? I want to let go of that resentment. And we go to that person. And we ask forgiveness. Forgive me because I've been resenting you. I did this with lots of people in my life. And I feel like it really is a deep humbling and chipping away of the false ego. And so the primary place to go for all of us is our parents, because it's a very strong relationship. And usually there's resentment. Even if we had good parents and they did a pretty good job, we still hold some resentment for things that happened, unless they were perfect parents, unless they were perfect enlightened parents. And who has that, right? Pretty rare. So some mistakes were made and we were harmed in various ways and we hold some resentment. So then we can go. I went to my mother, I went to my father and said, I told, my parents, they divorced when I was very young. And so I didn't realize it at the time. I thought, no big deal, lots of people divorce. But later in life, I saw the harm that caused me, not having my father around and always wanting like a strong father in my life, and then getting a little spoiled by my mother. And so I realized I resented my mother for spoiling me, and I resented my father for not being there. And so I went to both of them. And I told my father, I said, I didn't realize this when I was young, but all these years, I've been resenting you. And I'm sorry for that. I realized you tried your best, but I was harmed, and I'm carrying this resentment, but I want to let it go now. I see, just like I make mistakes too, and I see that you also maybe made some mistakes, and I want to let go of the resentment I'm holding towards you. As soon as I said that to my father, he just immediately just cried, because he was holding so much guilt for so many years that he had left, our particular home when I was young, and he was always worried that that was going to have some bad effect. And when I spoke it, it was like it came out of nowhere, this conversation for him, and he was just shocked. But after that, then the connection to my father, it was, in one sense, I felt freed from my father and freed from my mother, like breaking away, but in a very healthy way, like becoming my own person. But then the relationship also became deeper and more friendly, between me and both my parents. And I did the same thing with my mother. I went to her, told her what I was resenting, and that I wanted to let it go in a prayerful mood, that Krishna, only by your grace is this possible. But I made the attempt. So I recommend to everybody listening, think about where you hold resentment and go to that person directly. It's going to take a lot of courage, but have some understanding of what the reality is. We're all harming each other. We're either harming or being harmed. And usually when we're being harmed, it's just a matter of time. Because of that harm, we harm another. That's all that's going on in this material world. The cheaters, the cheated, the harmers and the harmed. But the harmed and the cheated become the cheaters because they hold resentment. They still have that resentment. So it all just flips. The dualities just keep alternating until one sees there's no solution. What's the real solution? Oh, I'm absorbed in the dualities because I've turned away from my true nature. I've turned away from God. So now that's what my real duty, my real task in life is now. What is surrender to God? I want to know that every day. What does that mean? How do I do it? Krishna says after the whole Gita, right? This is the Bhagavad Gita, the essence. So many things are mentioned. And in the end, he tells Arjuna, well, you've heard it all, Arjuna, but let me just give you the essence in a nutshell. Just, give up the other things I've even said, the other dharmas, and just surrender unto me. Do not fear that. I will protect you. You can trust that. I will take it from there, right? We hear so many songs, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I was just reading the other day, this song where he says, now I have surrendered completely to the Lord, and I just see joy in all directions. And he says, my whole past has just disappeared. Right? That's interesting because we hold on to the past and what happened to me. He says it's vanished because of my surrender. I don't even know my past and my history. Doesn't mean he forgets it. We have a memory, but it means letting go of the resentment of the past, letting go of the lamentation from the past. Free, completely freed, and that surrender. Krishna removes the lamentation from the heart, the resentment, the fear, the hate. It's all there inside. And this is why we struggle, and this is why we're always tense, and this is why we never feel right. But that surrender to the Lord, and he will take over, he will take charge of your life completely. And then what happens? And I'll end with this. I have a little time for some comments, questions, or thoughts. So when one truly reconnects to the Lord, then one becomes an instrument of the Lord's absolute forgiveness. The Lord, again, his nature is forgiveness. And that's, in other words, his nature is mercy. Mercy is just flowing from him, just like light, is just coming, is one with the sun. It's coming from the sun. So Krishna has just mercy and grace. And when we become compatible with Krishna's nature by letting go of resentment, then we become instruments of his forgiveness in this world. It's the message of the devotee, the pure devotee. God's mercy receive it, open yourself to it, surrender and experience it. So we become instruments of God's compassion and forgiveness in this world. And that is the most amazing life. Can you imagine? Actually connected to the Lord, truly, not theoretically. Your heart is now just illuminated with his light and his love, and you simply look at others and you see that they're disconnected. So your whole drive, your whole mission in life becomes to serve them, but they can also reconnect to the Lord, right? And that will move our action, our movement is all compassion. This is Srila Prabhupada. We have an example. We have a living example of such a person. And that's why we're all so inspired. What is it about him that's inspiring so many people? This is what's driving all of his action. He's like an instrument of the Lord's power, the Lord's love. So I hope something here was beneficial, and grateful for this opportunity to share, to look at a few verses from the Gita and the Bhagavatam, and perhaps looking at this topic from another angle, which I find to be very important and useful in my own life. And I hope it was beneficial for you in some way. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful points you brought up, and how well you connected them to the scriptures, Prabhupada's purports, Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. I have a question about what about somebody who's had very painful situations that they've gone through in life, whether they are children or adults, or maybe they're adults and they had it happen to them as they were children. And you touched on this, even in your case. But a lot of times the individuals have a hard time giving up that resentment, even though they may understand it theoretically, especially to go to the person who has hurt them in many ways, different ways. That might be really traumatic. And so how do you deal with that? Can you talk a little bit about that? Yes.
And, it's not that we're going to the person and saying, I forgive you for what you did. It's a little different. It's kind of subtle. We're not condoning that person for what they did. We're not going to now just give them this free pass and, oh, you really harmed me, but I'm going to let it go. So you could even tell the person you were wrong, but I am wrong now because I'm holding this resentment towards you. See, if we're holding resentment, we're harming ourselves. There will be no peace in our hearts if we hold resentment. Some of us are and it's a process. So it's not like, that's why I'm sharing so many things about understanding of the spiritual nature and what's happened originally. So we need knowledge. We need self-knowledge. We need to see by forgiving a person, I'm connecting myself to God in a deeper way. And I want that. Do we want that? So once all this is seen and understood, then the act of forgiving becomes a very powerful method of reconnecting us to who we truly are. You're not saying you were fine for what you did to me. Again, you can directly tell the person that actually it wasn't fine, it wasn't good, it wasn't right. But it's also not right for me to hate you forever. It's also not right for me to hate you now. I want to let that go. I'm sorry for resenting you. So it's a little different because we always think we're afraid to do this because we think we're just letting this person go and letting them continue to, hey, they have to figure out, believe me, if anyone is exploiting and hurting another, they're not happy people. They can't be. If you're harming, if you're causing harm, in your heart, there's no peace. And so we have to let them come to their own understanding of that. But there's also no peace in my heart if I'm holding resentment. And I want Krishna to take that away. Free me. Krishna, free me from that. So we have to see what's really happening. And this way we get a little courage to go and do it, no matter what's happened to us. And it's a process. So it's not, we may take some just time to ourselves. We may take, just time to heal, time far away from the person, from the situation, reflection, seeing the scriptures in a deeper way, taking shelter of Krishna through the name of Krishna. As devotees, we have a sadhana, we have a practice. And also, like I was praying that day and I was asking Krishna, show me what's inside of me. And that was such a shocking realization. I was like, oh, this is the problem. And I've hurt others too. And I'm being hurt, and we're all doing this. And that vision gave me the courage to go up to people that I love and that harmed me in various ways, and to tell them, well, you did harm me. And I realized that I've also harmed people. And I realized you probably tried your best. You didn't want to become my father and mother and harm your children. Nobody wants that, right? Nobody really has that desire. I'm going to ruin my children. But things happen. We're in the material consciousness. Pain is caused, and I'm also doing the same. So when you understand that about yourself, so take time first before you just go out the door and forgive everybody who has harmed you. Take time and just reflect and get self-knowledge. Understand the true situation. See what's driving you, what's causing pain. And then some courage comes to go and do this, because really it's for our benefit to go and forgive. And once we're truly convinced of that, if we're not convinced of that, then it may not help us get there, or it may not cause us to go and forgive. But if we truly get convinced, then we say, at some point for me, I thought, I have to do this. I have to go to, this friend. I have to go to my parents. I have to go, because I saw that I wouldn't be in peace if I didn't. So I hope something there was helpful.
Oh, yes, very much so. But how do people let go of that desire for, if somebody did something that they should get some kind of reaction for it, not get away with it?
That's already taken care of by the laws of nature. We don't have to do anything. If somebody has done harm and has hurt another, the laws of nature. That's why I said such a person can't be happy, even if they're for a moment, a few moments in life, it looks like they're doing okay. It looks like they're happy. But in actuality, such a person cannot have peace in their heart. And material energy will also send a reaction to them. That's karma. So we don't have to be the instruments of that reaction. Then we entangle ourselves further, but it will come through somebody. Krishna sometimes uses people as karmic reactions for each other. But the person who agrees to be a karmic reaction to another also further entangles himself or herself in another karmic reaction. But a devotee, when he starts to see that this is the game going on, they start to withdraw from it all. They start to move back of being karmic reaction. Higher knowledge is starting to come into the consciousness. And one is detaching from that. One is desiring to only love. What does that mean? How do I do that? That becomes an important question and focus in one's life. Things, material energy will take care of it. Things will go on. So we don't have to worry too much about that. You can do your duty also and take care of it on the level of the material energy. You also justice, there's justice can be served. You can also live and act in that way. And the key is to be just and to do what's necessary on that level, but without resentment.
That's what your wife just says. Bhakti Lata, she said, it may also be our duty to see justice done, but without resentment.
Yeah, I was reading the other day in the Bhagavatam that Lord Ramchandra, Ravana was just doing so much harm, and he was such a harmful person. So Lord Ramchandra killed him. He did what was needed. He totally removed him, but there was no resentment. And right after he killed Ravana, he told Vibhishan, Ravana's brother, now you perform the funeral ceremony for the benefit of his soul. Now you do what's necessary to help him. So it was like he did what was needed in the moment. the justice was required. And we have to understand, am I the person who's supposed to make this justice thing happen? Or, we could let it go, we could get involved. But whatever we do, the key is to do it without resentment. And because as soon as there's resentment in our response, even if it's justice, the resentment, we keep that alive in ourselves, we're feeding it, and then we get reactions also as well from that. And this is not meant to like scare us, oh, you're going to get some heavy reaction. It's just meant to, it's an appeal to our intelligence, not to get involved in these things, but to understand what it means to get involved in my true self.
I think Yadabar Prabhu has some things he would like to say. Go ahead, Yadabar Prabhu, just unmute yourself.
I've got a text there. I said excellent Shastra-based take on forgiveness.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Hold on.
Power off.
I wrote that it was an excellent Shastra-based take on forgiveness. And then I sent the Bhagavad Gita 15.5 about surrender, those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are free from dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Now, surrender to Krishna is for most of us, it's a long process. And we can't expect to be fully surrendered and then do our duty to go to those who we want to forgive. That's not practical. And you brought that out. You pray to Krishna, you do it anyway. You pray to Krishna and just do it. So, and it's difficult, very hard. But congratulations to you on doing that with your parents. It's a wonderful story.
Thank you, Yadavar Prabhu. I appreciate your point. Yes, we're still called to go and do it, as you're mentioning.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can go and do it with this understanding of what's actually happening. We actually see it as a chipping away, as a surrender to the Lord. My forgiveness of another, I should see the relationship of that to my surrender to the Lord. So we bring that consciousness to the activity of forgiving. And in that way, because we realize, well, I can't really do it. I can't really remove resentment, but it's my duty to go and try and to cultivate this quality of forgiveness. And so we bring all that to the activity of forgiving another person. And in that way, the motive starts to change. We start to see it with true wisdom that's been given to us by the devotees in the scriptures.
And this can be certainly done with Krishna also. The original person from whom we left. And we're certainly sorry we did that. And we want to forgive him for that violation of his love and trust.
Yeah, very nice. And we can bring that into our chanting, right? Because when Prabhupada says, what is our chanting? Krishna, please engage me in your service. It's right there. It's like, Krishna, I've turned away, but now I want to be utilized by you for service. And that is a surrender. Every attentive mantra we chant is a surrender. Everything is surrender when we have that mindset. If our motive for doing everything, if we can see those relationship to surrender to God, then it will have a new value to us. It will have a new power.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, there was once, like in Mayapur, we had a very difficult situation. There was a flood, and there was this devotee who was in a boat with all his family members. And then it happened so that the boat, tipped over, and 3 of his family members died just in front of him. So it was the the wife, who was Prabhupada's granddaughter or great-granddaughter, no granddaughter, and then so his wife, the older daughter, and his brother was his only brother left out of 5. So that happened within like 10 minutes. This devotee's life turned into like a living hell. And it was so shocking to the whole community. We were all like, we can't go to the temple and look at Krishna and think, you stand there smiling while this devotee is like living hell on earth. Why? You know, we were all like, we had such a struggle to hold back our anger to Krishna. We thought, this is like, how in the world do you dare to do that? Why? Like, why, you know, why did this have to happen? I mean, really, it was like such a reality check, like who's in charge, who has the bigger plan, who has the ultimate love for all of us. And like Krishna saying, sorry, you're just not seeing what I see, and this is something I have to do as my act of love towards this devotee. And so this devotee was on suicide watch for a long time. And his guru, Jaipataka, sent like a whole group of devotees to him day and night to just watch him, to not take his life. He had another daughter left. So his Guru Maharaj said, you have to live for your daughter, and you just have a different duty now. Your duty changed. Before you had the duty to take care of 4 or 5 people, now it's just 1, but you have to continue. So it was really, really, really difficult. It was such a test to just, you know, let go of that resentment, let go of that anger. I remember, I think I didn't go to the temple for like a whole week, and there were many of us that thought, you know, it's too much. Like Krishna's standing there smiling, and we are all like devastated. So yeah, it was very difficult. So it's a real test, like we say, like to surrender to Krishna, to no matter what. It's easier said than done, you know. It was such a, you know, change from theory to practice in that situation. Was very painful, actually.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is truly a big test. And you know, my experience is in the little small tests, you know, start to kind of start there with little daily things that are happening. You know, you feel something that doesn't go your way. And like you said, what do we do when things don't go according to our will? We feel anger. Now, who's that anger actually towards? It's actually towards Krishna. It's resentment of Krishna. Because anytime there's this anger, we're resisting the way things are. And who makes things the way they are? Who's the source? Now, the law of karma, of course, we are entangled in our own karmic reactions, but the law of karma is set up by the Supreme Lord. Right? And so there is a sense that whenever something goes wrong, whenever there's some anger that just comes out of us, it is a kind of resentment towards God for the way life is. Why? You know, those questions. And then little tests we start to see if we can start to accept everything in my small day. This one day, just try tomorrow. Little things will happen. Try to accept the good and the bad as actually something provided by the Lord for my spiritual growth. And in little ways, if we start to pass that little test, we'll start to see more and more by Krishna's grace that actually everything is actually meant for the soul's return to the Supreme Lord. And then when some big thing comes like that, I mean, what to do? Sometimes we just have to, we can't just turn that on, right? It's painful. Like I think what you mentioned, Jaipataka Swami, and just sending people to be with this person and just healing and take time and just express love and, you know, everything like that. So these big things are just, they're overwhelming. But if we learn in just the moment by moment, day by day, to kind of see Krishna's hand, what is the real, Krishna is all good, absolute. Nothing but goodness can come. And when life is good, we connect to that. When life gets harder, we're just like, wait a minute. And then when something, as you described, is just totally overwhelming. So we have to be patient with ourselves in those moments. And throughout our life, day by day, just see how, actually the more, at a certain point, the more intense the material situation, the more rapid our spiritual advancement. But that's at a certain point of advancement already, to be able to use that. And so some terrible thing happens, and actually you can make rapid advancement from the more difficult it is. But that's only at a certain point. If we're not strong spiritually, that can break us. A difficult event can break us. So we have to build ourselves up gradually by the small events, by the small things, by the people just in my day today, what happened, and being able to pass those tests. Because death, right? Death is another big test. It's said that death is the final examination. How do you pass a final examination? You can pass it better when you've passed all the little pop quizzes throughout the year. If you have a pop quiz, a sudden test that comes out of nowhere. If I handle those rightly, then when the big examination comes at the end, I've already done it so many times. I've turned to Krishna and all those little things. I now have the habit of turning to Krishna, of taking shelter of Krishna, of surrendering, of trusting Krishna. That habit has been there. Now it's a part of me. And now even when something huge and difficult comes, I still trust Krishna. And that shouldn't be imposed. We shouldn't force that, pretend that, but it can really be felt and experienced at a certain point in our spiritual life.
Nice, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the forgiveness before one dies?
Yeah, and this comes up. I work as a chaplain, spiritual care provider, and a lot of times when people are dying, what comes to the surface before they die is that this desire to forgive or to be forgiven. This is a major thing that comes up, and again, because it is like a wall that separates us from our deeper self. So people suddenly have this desire to speak with a person, to speak with family. I have to reconcile this somehow. That comes into the heart because it's a block, it's a tension. So often people will feel. I was with a man once, and he was dying of cancer, said to have maybe a few weeks, at most a month or two, to live. And when I went to see him, I told him I was a chaplain. And he said, "You're exactly who I wanted to see and needed to see." He said, "This is it. I know now for sure I'm not going to be here much longer. I need to find my son." And he said, "I need your help in finding my son." So, he said that there hasn't been a day in my life that's gone by where I haven't thought of my son, but I was never there in his life. I had problems with his mother and all this, and then his mother also didn't help, and he felt like she had turned her son away from his father. And anyway, he was explaining this all to me. He said, "But I want to bring him. I need to apologize to him for not being in his life." And so I got a phone number of some people from him. We actually eventually found. I called his son on the phone, and I told him that your father has cancer, a short time to live. And the first thing he mentioned to me is that he wanted you to come in, and he's feeling like some regret in his heart, and he wants to talk to you. And his son told me, "Forget it. I'm not coming." Well, now he wants to suddenly see me after all these years have passed. He's been totally absent. There's a lot of anger. So I told him just to give it some thought. I said, "That's fine. You have the right to do what you want to do here, but give it a little thought. Just your father here, and he's passing, and this was his request. Just consider it." And he said, "Okay, I'll do that." So he hung up, and he called me back at the next time and told me that, well, why should I come and see him? Because I'm angry at him. I just have anger. I said, well, why don't you come and see him and tell him that? Why don't you come and tell him I'm angry at you for all these years? And he said, well, isn't that, he's dying, isn't it? You know, I said, I don't know how he's going to react to it, but why don't you come and see him and tell him, you know, reveal what's on your heart, what's on your mind, and talk to him. So he said, I'll think about it. And then he called me back again, a few days passed. And he said, you know what? I've been thinking about this and I'm angry at my father for not being there. And he said, but I also have a daughter. And I'm doing the same thing to her, what my father did to me. I'm also not in her life. And he was getting this realization that, you know, who am I to hold this anger towards him when I'm doing the same thing? It's what I was talking about, right? It's a kind of starting to see that we're all doing the same thing to each other. And so I said, you should definitely come and share this, share your heart with him. You know, every time I see your father, he's just talking about you. He really wants to see you. So he decided to come. He came to the hospital. And as soon as they saw each other, then both of them just embraced. Father was crying. He said, you know, I've always thought about you. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to come back. And I didn't want to create more pain. And he explained like this. And he said, please forgive me, son. I love you. And his son said, I need your forgiveness as well. I've been hating you all this time. But what you did to me, I'm also doing to my daughter. And so I forgive you for what you've done. I love you. And such a, you know, powerful for me just to witness this. And this, again, this, you know, made me see the necessity of doing this in my own life. But, you know, both of them were changed, really changed from this experience. And I saw that the connection, the love that came through after that, you know, resentment is a block. You cannot love with resentment, and we all hold it. Right? And the father told me, you know, he lived for another few weeks, and he told me, this has only happened by God's grace. I was starting to lose all hope that this was possible, but I feel free now. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to die. You know, and he died with that reconciliation with his son, and seeing it as the mercy of God. So that's one story that comes to mind, but there's many. But often this does come up, this need for forgiveness. So why wait till then, right? Just approach people here and now in life. You're going to be so fearful to do it. Your mind's going to tell you not to do it, try to convince you to do it. Oh, don't even worry about it. You'll be all right. But forget all that. Ignore the mind completely and just go and forgive. Just make that when you're ready. Try to be ready. Try to work towards that, and you can actually go and do it, and then have that conversation. And Krishna can help you, and you'll feel freed from some of that heavy resentment that we hold, that we live with.
And by forgiving and giving up that resentment, our journey to Krishna is open. You know, it doesn't hold us back or bring us back to this material world to deal with those things that we're thinking about at the end.
In one sense, we could say that the whole wall that separates me from Krishna is my resentment of Krishna. That I also have anger towards Krishna. You know, if I'm angry about anything, it's anger towards Krishna in a sense, when you look at it in a deeper level. Because when am I angry? When things don't go according to my desire, my will. It should be like this, or the world should be like this. Right? But once we can start to accept everything that's coming and starting to trust, and this is the resentment of God gradually dissipating. There's a nice verse in the Bhagavatam about forgiveness in the 9th canto. And it says that forgiveness has two qualities. One is that it illuminates the heart. When you actually forgive, your heart becomes illuminated with light. It's like the sun. And then the other quality is Bhagavan Tushyate. it completely satisfies the heart of God. So when you truly forgive by God's grace, we can only do it by God's grace, but when we actually forgive, the heart will become, the darkness in the heart will be illuminated like the sun. And then Bhagavan Tushyate, it brings pleasure to the heart of God. The only thing that can bring pleasure to the heart of God, it has to be divine. He doesn't take pleasure from material things, from material forgiveness, something that looks like forgiveness but isn't actually forgiveness. That may not be pleasing to him. What he's pleased with is his own spiritual energy. That's what he interacts with. Even when he comes to the material world, in a sense, he's not touching matter. He's too high for that. He's too refined. He comes into matter to save the living being. But his exchanges with the pure devotees, why does he exchange with the pure devotees? Because it's also this exchange of the spiritual energy, spiritual qualities are interacting. So true forgiveness, which comes by God's grace, his heart becomes satisfied when we forgive. He's pleased, and our hearts become illuminated.
Beautiful. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to?
Just real quick, in a strange way, it's what I experience when I hold on to a resentment. It feels like some kind of justice comes from that. And so I don't want to give it up in certain circumstances. But it's a strange thing.
Yeah, because it feels right if we don't forgive. After all, this person did wrong, right? It's like, I don't want to give them that satisfaction. And that's why we have to keep returning to the understanding that by me holding resentment, I just harm myself. And I'll harm others with that resentment in my heart too. I want to let that go. So I'm going to go to this person. Maybe what they did was wrong. They'll have to deal with that themselves, but I'm going to forgive. I'm going to let go of resentment. And we feel just. We feel in the right. Right? That's a great trick of Maya. I'm not going to do this because it's just, I want to stay in the right. If that's what you mean, that's how I'm interpreting what you said. But hope that connects.
No, it's right. It's ultimately it comes from the false ego. Is we think we have to correct them.
Yes.
We have to correct those that have wronged us, and there is some temporary relief also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we could do that. We can do that too, but in the right spirit. This is what we're talking about. So we can do that like a parent or like a friend. If something is wrong, you can go and do what's necessary on that level. But just beware, it's not this total false ego motivation that just wants to feel that now I'm in the right, now I'm above. That creeps into it and contaminates it. And the other person won't receive it well either. If it comes from false ego, a person cannot receive false ego. They'll just respond with false ego. And but if someone actually does it in the right way, a person can maybe, even though they may react wrong, in some, you don't know how they're going to react. But if we respond from our true nature, it's all auspicious.
It's like it's a sort of sense gratification to hold on to that. They did something wrong, so you're in the right. You got to hold them to it. So sort of sense gratification. Okay. Any other final comments or questions before we close up?
I hope you do more of these kind of seminars.
Yes, we hope so too, that you'll come back again. Okay, well, thank you, Ghanashyam Prabhu, for these powerful, deep insights into resentment and forgiveness, and how through forgiveness we can learn to love ourselves and Krishna more deeply. And thank you also, as Jayadebhar Prabhu pointed out, for making all those Shastric connections of Srila Prabhupada's books, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. And really like the point that forgiveness only comes after surrendering to the Lord. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I would like to thank all of you out there on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube for taking your valuable time to tune in. And Mukyadasi, our fearless leader here in Alachua, for continuing her continued support. Vaishnavi Dasi, our technical support, and the end of life care team, and to Bhakti Lata Devi for the use of her soundtrack. And thank you, Hare Krishna, and stay tuned for the outro, which is just coming now. Let me see.